You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph, and this is a very exciting episode for me because I'm joined here by the man who inspired my love for football in the first place, my brother, Fabio. How are you feeling today, Fabio?
Man, I'm loving today because I finally get to have you live here from the man cave. I've been trying to have you, film a live podcast from my man cave here for the longest time. So I'm happy that you're here. Happy that we're talking Niner football.
Yep. Yeah, because as we know, it's training camp, and that's really like what kicks off like the start of the season, at least for people who are like diehards and love every bit of this football season. So, and I've been attending these training camps for those of you that didn't know. And so we'll talk about, the updates from day 4 of 49ers training camp right now. I'm just going to go through some of the injury updates because Kyle Shanahan did provide some updates. Yesterday, if you guys recall, Kyle Shanahan said that Eric Armstead was going to be out for a few weeks with a knee sprain. Today, for training camp practice, he actually gave updates on a couple of other players. And that defensive line is kind of hurting at this point. Maurice Hurst, he has a torn bicep, which means his season is likely done at this point, bearing a late season comeback, which is still technically possible at this point. But, that's a huge bummer for Hurst, who has kind of been hit by the injury bug for, pretty often for his career, and he was finding some new life with the 49ers. So tough to see him go down, and hopefully he can come back strong from his torn bicep. Then we had Hassan Ridgeway, also from the defensive line, defensive tackle, who injured his quad, and he's going to be out for a few weeks as well.
Yeah, it's that time of season where it's that time of year where we kind of cross our fingers, right, at the start of every day, at the end of every day, because that's the one thing as a fan you don't want to hear is player injuries. And we've had some years in the past where players have gone down, and it's really been a critical loss for the team.
Right.
I could remember some losing some cornerbacks a few years ago during training camp. And so
last year,
it seems like every year, the Niners always are battling injuries, and training camp is that time of season where, like I said, you're crossing your fingers, hoping that guys don't go down, and hopefully it's no one very critical to the team, right? Like no starters go down with injuries. So, thanks for those updates, but hopefully
there are more, right?
Definitely. I hope that we could continue dodging any serious injuries to keep players on our team.
And I was going to talk about this, but I was kind of holding my breath because I actually saw Nick Bosa today. He looked a little shaken up, and he ended his practice slightly early. It was already towards the end of practice, but it looked like he tweaked his foot or something. Like he took his shoe off and everything, and was like taking a look at it. Had some trainers coming up to him. So I hope that doesn't turn out to be serious. We'll probably hear like what Kyle Shanahan says. If there is anything serious, he would bring it up in tomorrow's. Well, I don't know if he's live tomorrow. There's no practice tomorrow, I don't think. Yeah, it's their day off, so he might not speak until Monday, which is the next practice. So whenever Kyle Shanahan speaks again, like that's when we'll have another update. And who knows, maybe tomorrow's day off will help him out.
That's the cool thing about being at training camp, though. You have like the behind the scenes, and you could kind of see, if a player does leave early, or if the the coaching staff or the medical team happens to be looking at a player's leg or a certain part of their body. So that's the cool thing about being at training camp. You kind of have a suspicion or some insight into what may possibly be coming down the road in regards to some injury news. So I guess more to come regarding Bosa. Hopefully, gotta cross our fingers. Hopefully, it's nothing serious as we head into the day off tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah, it's never something you want to see, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God, like I gotta let 49ers Twitter know, because like, I just never want anything to happen, especially to Nick Bosa. But let's look at some of these comments really quickly. So Joey, this is the best comment right here. Joey says Steph and her bro equals Montana and Rice. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. Speaking of, like, literally, like, the Montana jersey is above your head, and then the Rice jersey is above mine. So actually, I don't know if you noticed that, Joey, but yeah.
That is a good combo right there.
And really quickly, does our audio sound okay? Because we're like sharing a mic over here. We're kind of doing this on the fly. This is a new location for us. So if our audio sounds good, give us a thumbs up in the comments. Would appreciate it.
There you go.
Hey, what's going on, Amin? Shout out you.
Looks like we're getting a lot of love for the brother sister combo here, which I'm digging.
Because he's been wanting to get on the pod for a while now. So these comments kind of let you know, like, Steph, you got to bring me back on.
I like what I'm reading so far. Loving the comments from the viewers. But I appreciate you, Steph, for bringing me on board. I know you've created this fan base and this following. So thank you for sharing that with me and bringing me on board here. I'm really excited, and I love seeing some of the comments that you're getting here. A lot of thumbs up, so it looks like the audio is good to go. So
we got the thumbs up.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much. All right, well, we're gonna continue talking about day 4 of training camp. I mean, because the first thought, actually, when I saw some of this injury news, I was like, well, shit, at least the offensive line, Trey Lance, the quarterbacks can get a little bit of a breather, because they have been struggling, at least so far, with this defensive line, because it's just been so dominant. And it speaks to how good this defensive line is probably going to be this year, right? But I still would like to see what Trey Lance can do. So at the same time, I'm also, while I'm happy that the defensive line is dominating, I'm also like, okay, guys, that's enough. We know you're good. I want to see some Trey Lance action. And so I still feel like the quarterbacks did kind of struggle today again. I would say it was probably a little bit better than yesterday, which you always like to see. But still, overall, all of the quarterbacks, actually, from Lance to Sudfeld to Brock Purdy, like, kind of struggled at some points. And as I've been mentioning, there aren't any true sacks in training camp, right? You aren't allowed to, like, tackle anybody. Kyle Shanahan gets, kind of pissed if you're, like, knocking guys over. He'll play that clip over, make sure you guys, the players see that.
Everybody respects the red jersey.
Yeah. So
the red jersey or do they still wear the red jersey or what color do the Niner quarterbacks wear? So that players know not to tackle that specific player.
The quarterbacks wear black jerseys, and pretty much, I mean, during this period in training camp, no one's tackling at all, because they're not even in pads yet.
You're right.
The pads come on Monday. So I feel like the defense is still dominating, and the quarterbacks are, kind of make do with what they have. And as I was saying a little bit ago, I feel like there are would-be sacks on almost every snap for these guys.
That's good to hear.
Yes, but like I want to see Trey Lance
Well, okay. I see what you're saying. You kind of want to see how he does really with under pressure, right? Like
he is under pressure. That's what I'm seeing. I kind of want to see what he can do, I guess, without pressure, but then like he's always going to be under some pressure, I guess, in the NFL. So it's like, it's great for him to learn from. But for me as a fan, wanting to see the sparks of, Trey Lance, like, I guess I wanted to be a little easier for him to get the ball off. But at the same time, since there aren't any true sacks or tackles in practice, even a would-be sack, the play still continues, so he can still throw the ball.
Gotcha.
But the point is, he's still very much under duress.
Gotcha.
And what I've been saying is that like the good thing that I see from Trey Lance is that it doesn't seem like he freaks out too much. Like he's able to move out of the pocket pretty well. He keeps his composure, keeps his eyes upfield and tries to find somebody. And
let me ask you this regarding Trey Lance. Has there been like a go-to guy that you've noticed he tends to look at and throw the ball to? Has that been Kittle, Ayuk? Has it been a running back from the backfield? Is there a certain player that you see has been getting more looks from Trey Lance?
Definitely Brandon Ayuk.
Okay.
And I mean, it makes sense because Debo Samuel's not out there. So really the number one receiver in this offense is Brandon Ayuk. And Ayuk's been working on both the first team and the second team. So Nate Sudfeld has been targeting him quite a lot as well.
Nice. Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So I feel like Lance has a great rapport with Brandon Ayuk. And I mean, they practiced a lot together during the off season, so it makes sense that they have like this good chemistry, and it seems to be translating on the field as well. So that's always great to see. The one thing though is that Tarvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley, their coverage in practice has been so sticky and just they've just been on the wide receivers where it's hard for them to get open at times. And so, you know, we've seen a lot of pass breakups. We've seen some interceptions.
But that's a good sign too.
It's a good sign.
I mean, you got to remember where this defense left off last year, right? They beat the Dallas Cowboys in Texas, right?
Yeah.
They beat the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay, right?
Yep.
And they pretty much stopped Adams, right? Who's considered the number one receiver in the NFL. And then they almost beat, you know, the LA Rams, right?
Yeah.
So this defense, from what I'm hearing right now and the feedback that you're giving me right now, it seems like they're picking up where they left off. And it's good to see that because this 49ers team is probably going to be the defense that's going to be the foundation to leading us back to the playoffs and back to making a Super Bowl run. So I'm okay with that if the defense and these cornerbacks are the ones that are really, you know, outplaying or really shining versus our offense, because this is the core that's going to be the foundation to a successful season this year, right? So that's good news as well, because it just lets you know that they haven't missed a beat, and they're kind of picking up where they left off from a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've improved in the areas that, you know, weren't as strong. Like the addition of Tarvarius Ward so far is proving to be huge. Like he has looked so good in training camp, and I'm very excited for that secondary right now. And you said it, like the defense and also special teams and is going to be a huge part of pretty much insulating Trey Lance, where like even if he isn't perfect, which he won't be, it's his first year as a starter. You know, even if he's not perfect, the 49ers can still find a way to win because they are so strong in other areas. I don't know, you might not have heard me say this from my other pods, but right now, it feels like the 49ers defense has a potential to be the best in the league.
That's awesome. That's great news. Yeah. And I believe it. I mean, looking at it, you know, we have the number one linebacker in all of football, right? And Fred Warner. And then we have a killer front four, right?
Yeah.
With Bosa, Kinlaw. We saw what those guys did last year and the troubles they gave Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers played one of his worst games of his career in the playoffs last year, and it was because of the pressure that our front, defensive linemen, you know, all the issues that they gave him. So, again, you know, for you to say that they're primed to be the top defense this year, I'm loving that. I'm loving that feedback that you're giving, and I'm really excited to, you know, for week one to really see, you know, how they get after a mobile quarterback, because they play the Chicago Bears in week one. Which, you know, in years past, it's always been the mobile quarterbacks that tend to give our defense problems. So I'm very excited to see how they kick it off in week one there with Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because this defense in the last couple years has struggled against like those mobile guys. So Trey Lance.
Let's say it. Russell Wilson, right? Let's be honest. Russell Wilson has been the guy that has always been the thorn to the 49ers defense. So that's the one, has always been the one Achilles heel to the 49ers front four. And right off the bat, week one, Justin Fields, right? So they're going to get tested right away. But I don't know. I'm excited about it because like you're saying, the defense I think is primed for another successful year. I'm a Nick Bosa guy.
Oh yeah.
I love Nick Bosa. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in his fourth year with the team. And with the healthy Javon Kinlaw, right?
Yes.
Him in the mix now. What's the dynamic that he brings to the defense now? I'm excited. I really am.
Speaking of Javon Kinlaw and Mcglinchey, today was their first day really participating in team drills. As we know, the 49ers plan is to ease the both of them in coming off their injuries. And so it was exciting to see both of them getting some time. I mean, Kinlaw looks awesome. Like, he looks huge, which he's always been huge, right? But he looks fit. So, like,
that's a good sign.
It's a great sign. Mcclinchy also looks skinnier, which, depending on who you ask, that's a good or a bad thing, right? But the point is, I think Mcclinchy is also, going to come back from his injury quite all right, and he's going to go right back to being, the right tackle on this team. So he did get some play there as well. And it's good that the team is easing him in. There's no reason to rush him at all. And Kinlaw looked, from what I saw, he looked awesome today, and he was getting a lot of penetration during team periods.
Well, it's interesting you bring up both of these two guys, and again, I'm really happy to see that they're back on the field, participating, in team drills. But you bring out two key guys who, I guess not the right word to use here, but guys on the bubble, right? Guys that really it's a make or break year, right?
Yeah,
you have Javon Kinlaw,
who's
the first 2 years he's been injured a lot, hasn't really been on the field as much as we would like. Going into year 3 with the team, so this is really like a make or break year for him, I think. And then we have Mike Mcclinchy, final year of his contract.
Right.
So another guy that really, he really needs to bring it, right? Because it's going to be a make or break year for Mike Mcclinchy, and he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be a key role, especially with Trey Lance being a young guy, first time being a starter. We need that protection. We're going to need Mike Mcclinchy to protect and make sure that Trey Lance has time to throw and doesn't get injured. So both of those guys are going to be very key for our team's success this year.
Speaking of Mike Mcclinchy, I mean, you mentioned the fact that he's on the final year of his contract, and Paul has a great comment right here. Interesting, Mcclinchy thought he was too skinny in 2020, gained weight for 2021, and has now lost weight again for 2022. Yeah, so Mcclinchy has said that he thought he was a little, too heavy 2021, and he feels that may have contributed to his his injury. So that's why he slimmed down again. And interesting enough, like, some people, if you ask them about 2020 and Mcclinchy being skinny, some people think that he's not as good when he plays skinnier, because when he's going against, like, bull rush guys, like, he's getting overpowered. And I did see that sometimes. But Mcclinchy's strength has always been run blocking.
Right.
And I still think he's going to be, really good in that aspect. And also, I think overall this team is very happy with Mike Mcclinchy and what he's done through the course of his career with the 49ers. And ultimately, if he is just decent, I think they look to bring him back, honestly.
Yeah. I'm like 50-50 on Mike Mcclinchy. You got to remember, we play in the NFC West.
Yeah.
Real tough defenses, real tough D lines that we, he was asked to guard, to block Aaron Donald, right? So
he's
been matched up with some pretty big, defensive lines out there. So, the whole thing with his weight being too heavy, too skinny, to me, it's more of a footwork thing. To me, it's more of a footwork thing. It's not so much about the weight. So I'm really looking forward, for this year, because I think it's a year of redemption for him. How does
both of them
exactly? Javon Kinley, Javon Kinley more so from an injury standpoint. Again, he hasn't been on the field enough to prove his worth, right?
And I think that's really frustrating for him.
Definitely is. I would assume it is. Any player that goes on the IR, the one thing they say is they would love to be out there in the trenches fighting for their team, right?
Yeah.
Definitely, Javon wants to be out there proving his worth to the team. But Mike Mcclinchy, for me, it's good to see that he's healthy. He dropped the weight again for this year, so we're gonna see if in fact that helps with his footwork. When you look at O linemen, I always look at the footwork. And, how fast do they get off the line?
Mm-hmm.
How fast do they move backwards as the rush is coming in? So for me, Mike Mcclinchy is not so much about the weight; it's about the footwork for me.
Yeah, and one thing that we've been saying like through these first few days of camp, right, is that the offensive line is at a slight disadvantage until the pads come on.
Right.
So really, I think Monday will be our first solid look. And even then, it's still training camp, right? So should we be too worried about the offensive line performance, a week into training camp? Maybe not, because as some people have pointed out, when the season starts, no one cares what happened in training camp.
Right.
You know what I mean? So this is just a blip in the radar pretty much. It seems like a big deal right now, but these guys are just barely starting to get their feet, under them. I think that's how you say that phrase. I think that's the phrase, right?
Let's just hope that none of them get injured. For me, that's the big thing during training camp is no injuries. Let's go into the season and into week one feeling healthy, feeling ready to go.
Yep.
That's the big thing for those two guys, especially Javon Kinley and Mike Mcclinchy. But enough about Mcclinchy and Javon Kinlaw, because I know you really wanted to talk about the topic that I think everyone in the NFL is talking about. Debo Samuel. What is it about Debo Samuel that you've noticed while being at training camp, and what have you heard from Kyle Shanahan?
Well, today Kyle Shanahan did give an update, because he gets asked about Debo Samuel every day. Even though nothing has changed. I'm sure if anything did change, Kyle would mention it. But today, Kyle Shanahan said the team is grinding through extension talks with Debo Samuel. Nothing has been done yet, but I know they're working hard on it, is what he said. So, and that's as expected, right? I think the somewhat soft deadline is Monday when the pads come on. It would be nice to have Debo Samuel back, when that happens. And also the fact that DK Metcalf's deal got done. Tory Dandy, that was pretty much the only other distraction you can say that he had besides Debo Samuel's contract. So I think now all hands should be on deck for to get that done. So I expect something hopefully to happen, sooner rather than later.
It's funny because hearing Mike Shanahan say that makes me feel confident. For some reason, I actually felt like that wasn't fluff. I actually felt like he meant it. The executive team, the management team was actually working hard and grinding it out. Actually trying to get something done this week, or as soon as possible. It actually sounded like good news from the Debo Samuel front, right? So I was excited to actually hear that, because again, Kyle's not a guy that's gonna throw fluff at you, or
he doesn't
sugarcoat anything. So for him to say that kind of made me feel really good that management is really trying their hardest to figure this out sooner than having it carry on throughout training camp and possibly into week one, which is definitely what we don't want to see.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Trey Lance needs all of his weapons out there. including Debo Samuel, who is a huge part of this offense, whether he's the wide back or not. I mean, he's still a huge part, even as a receiver. But it has been positive for a while, I feel like, and everyone just wants to see the deal get done, right? So I think we're all just waiting for that, but I do feel like everything is heading in the right direction. And you asked me like what I've seen from Debo Samuel, like out on the field. I mean, he's been out there. He hasn't been participating. He's doing his hold in, which is fine. You don't want to risk any injury before you've signed that extension. So that's okay by me. And really, like he seems he's there, right? Like that's a good sign, and not just that, but like he seems engaged with the team as well. Trey Lance has mentioned that he's in team meetings.
That's awesome.
So that's great, and sometimes he'll during 11-on-11s or team periods he'll be on the sideline watching the guys. So he's there, he's involved, he feels part of the team, and he is part of the team. So.
I like to see that.
Yeah, I mean it's been all positive. Let's look at some of these comments really quick. On Monday, do you guys think a big difference will appear offensively for the starters in a positive way? I sure hope so. I mean, it might not be a huge jump that we see right off the bat on Monday, the first day of pads, but I think it'll be a gradual thing because again, this offensive line currently is at a disadvantage. So I think as they work together with pads on, it'll all start to feel natural for them again. And yeah, so I sure hope so that we see, the offensive line and hopefully see Trey Lance get a little more time in the pocket. And it should help in other areas as well. The offensive line is one of the big areas that should help, but it should help give us like a clear view of just about everything, I think. Let's see. Dawson says, I wonder how these running backs will do come Monday, more specifically TDP and Sermon. Yeah, because that's another position that like when they have pads on, they might move a little slower. You got, extra baggage on you.
Right? I mean, as a running back, speed is what matters.
Yeah.
So you're definitely different once the helmet's on, once the pads are on, and once you're full gear. So it'll be good to see those guys, how they're cutting, how fast they look. Yeah. Good point on Sermon though, because he was a guy that we were expecting a lot from him last year, and he kind of just fell off the radar as the season progressed. So that's someone that I think a lot of people are going to have on their radar come Monday is running back Sermon.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kept an eye on him today, and he has been involved with the second team unit and third team units for the most part, which is fine. I mean, he's working his way, building trust, I guess you can say, with the team. Elijah Mitchell, who, was pretty much the main guy last season, has been working with the ones, and I think he's deserved that, right?
Sure. Of course, 100%.
So I'm okay seeing that, and Jordan Mason has looked pretty good for an undrafted free agent. He looks like he belongs, and especially in a offense that's as running back friendly as Kyle Shanahan's, right? I really do feel like there's a place either on the roster or the practice squad for Jordan Mason. Another thing, because I think it was Mariah or Melissa wanted me, I think it was Melissa. She asked me if I could keep an eye on Hokett, the backup fullback. So I got a Hokett update. He was blocking with the third team unit.
Hokett.
And I mean, he looked fine.
What college is he from, by the way? Little trivia here. Do we know what college he's from?
He was from Fresno, wasn't he?
Fresno? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
he was, and that's why a lot of people like him.
Maybe those watching on the live right now could give us an update.
I gotta double check that because now this guy's got me paranoid. Fresno State, man.
There you go, Fresno State. Hey, good knowledge there. Good knowledge.
Yeah, so that's why a lot of people like him because he's, somewhat local.
Somewhat of a local guy, yeah.
Somewhat local.
Yeah,
people always like
down
those
south
guys
a little bit, yeah.
JC asked Steph, how were the snaps today from centers? Ooh, I'm glad you mentioned this because I did have this in my notes. Keaton Sutherland was working center with the second team unit. I'm not sure if he was with the third as well, but I did notice a couple of low snaps from him. So something to keep an eye on. The center position so far hasn't been the strongest by any means. But again, I'm going to save my judgment on like the entire offensive line until we see some pads on. So
I love the questions that your audience is feeding us though, like, because you got to figure, like, you know, I go to training camp, I got my eyes on the quarterback, the wide receivers, the running backs. JC here wants to know the centers, how are they doing? Like, I love
people
that
be testing me.
I love that we're getting different angles, running backs and centers. I like these questions here.
Yeah, it's actually you know, I can't keep my eyes on everyone at the same time, because like there's times where there's literally like 6 different things going on at the same time. Oh, and you probably got like
90 players on the field, right? At the same time, right? Like
so
how you know, it's very difficult to keep your eye on everyone on the field, but I mean, the centers do play a key role.
Yeah.
Especially with, you know, when you think this is Trey Lance's first season, right? So there has to be that chemistry and that rapport that the center and quarterback build. So good observation, good question there from JC.
Jake Brendel has still been the primary center, but Brunskill has gotten some work there as well. As we know, he hasn't been working at right guard so far. And after practice, for what it's worth, Brunskill and Trey Lance were working together, getting some snaps off, I guess, and working with one other receiver.
Steph, so let's talk about the surprise appearance that you noticed at today's camp. Let's tell the audience of that surprise appearance.
So I tweeted about this, and some of you may have seen. So Jimmy Garoppolo was actually at 49ers practice today. And so like we know that he's been at you know, the practice facility, right? Like in the weight room. He's been working on his, you know, throwing program and whatnot, getting back in shape and whatnot. But we hadn't seen him on the field.
Yeah.
And certainly not like in front of the fans for the world to see. So that was kind of odd. Like, I was thrown off by that, honestly. I was like, is that Jimmy G? And sure enough, it was. And you can imagine it got a pretty great reaction from the crowd. You know, he has a lot of fans. But all he was doing was running sprints along the sideline, kind of like what, you know, Debo Samuel has been doing this whole time, because again, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't want to get hurt either. Right. So it doesn't make sense for him to be doing anything too crazy either. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. And he was only out there for, I don't know, 5 10 minutes at most. So
I'm surprised he was out there. I'm surprised when you broke the news to me that he was out there, because after the press conference that, you know, Kyle had earlier this week, where he said, you know, he's no longer our guy, we're moving with Trey, I would have thought we're not going to see Jimmy G on the field, on the 49er practice field anymore. I just look at it from a fan's perspective. I look at that as like a distraction, you know, because like he's no longer the number one QB. And he was only out there for 5 minutes. So why even come out and do sprints for 5 minutes, knowing that you're not going to be the guy? Like, and
the fans are there. Like, it was just weird. It's weird, right? It was a little weird. I'm not going to lie. And it was somewhat of a like, obviously the team, the players weren't distracted by him doing that, but like the fans, like all the fans noticed him and were like calling out his name. Yeah. So it was. It's almost
like, you know, you're dating this girl, you break up with her, and then she shows up to your party, and your friends are kind of like, bro, like you broke up with this girl last week. What is she doing here? You know. And she's there for she shows up for 5 minutes and then leaves. It's like, that's how it feels. Like,
and then leaves.
Interesting news though. We're going to have to keep an eye on this, because what if he shows up again on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Like, what's the point of that? I don't know. But
do you think that, I mean, the team had to know he was going to do that though, right? Like,
but here's also like, would Shanny, would Mike, would coach like actually be like, hey, like get off the field, like what
run inside,
what are those conversations like?
Treadmill.
What are those conversations like? But from a fan, I'm looking at this like, I don't want Jimmy G on the field because he's gonna be a distraction somehow, one way or another. I feel like there's no reason for him to be out there. It's a distraction. Can you imagine Trey Lance taking snaps and he sees Jimmy G doing sprints on the side with Debo?
I don't think he would have noticed though. Like,
but think about that. You know, like that's how it feels like. Like, you know, you got to put yourself in Trey Lance's shoe. Like, you know, if he sees Jimmy G running sprints with Debo, I'm not saying that he was running sprints with Debo, but if he happens to look over, fans are cheering for him.
That's,
you know, he's talking to Debo or running sprints with Debo, and then all of a sudden Trey Lance is like, in his head, he's like, am I really the number one guy? Was coach's presser earlier this week really 100% factual? You know?
Yeah.
So he could play mind games, and that's what we don't want. We don't want that distraction to be there. Steph, I know you're there next week. Keep us updated on this Jimmy G
watch.
Jimmy G appearance. Like, I would say Jimmy G cameos at this point, because it's not his team. This is Trey Lance's team. Keep us updated next week. I'm going to be waiting for updates next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to see what you uncover on the Jimmy G update.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it's a huge distraction to the team right now. But what you really don't want is for Jimmy Garoppolo to stick around once the season starts, because then, to me, that's when it becomes a real distraction. But okay, let's continue looking at these comments. And I got a bot in the comments, which is actually fun. I'm flattered, actually. I've never had a bot in the comments. Like this. My chat's popping right now. I got bots. Like, I'm flattered, actually.
Yeah, a lot of bots. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, there you go. I think we got some mentions on the bot.
What's going on, Mariah? Okay, it must have been Gavin.
There we go.
Yeah. We got a lot of action coming on over here.
Definitely appreciate those that have tuned in. 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on a Saturday. You know, showing love to Steph here and her podcast. Definitely appreciate you guys tuning in. We see you guys here dropping messages. We appreciate you guys, tuning in and hearing what we have to say. Do you want me to read one over here?
Yeah.
This is a message from Paul. 49ers really need to cut him at this point. Talking about Jimmy G. He has zero value to the 49ers as far as a trade. The league is just waiting for a release at this point. I agree with Paul 100%. Paul, I agree with you 100%. Almost kind of feels like that girlfriend that's been dumped. We don't want her showing up to these parties anymore, right? Jimmy G needs to stay indoors. If he's going to be at the facility, he needs to stay indoors, away from the media, away from the fans, away from Trey Lance. But I agree with you, Paul. Definitely at this point, just cut ties. Time to move on.
All right. Really quickly, though, I just want to go to this comment because this is where I'm at. So Dawson says, I mean, it's smart to not cut him. It gives teams a disadvantage if they want him. And another thing, like I do kind of feel like if the 49ers were to cut him right now, the Seahawks sign him. Yeah. And I know people are saying like, like who cares? Like it's just Jimmy Garoppolo. But you got to think from the team's point of view. Like the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they don't want to see Jimmy Garoppolo go to a division rival. As bad as that team looks right now as far as their quarterback position, Jimmy Garoppolo could add something. Like he's definitely better than what they have right now. So like if you can keep a rival team, a team that you don't even like, from getting better, even if it's just a hair, you know, like you don't do it. So to me, that's the reasoning. I think that
I'm almost laughing as you're saying that example, because I'm looking at this from a fantasy football standpoint.
I think about that too. Because when you drop someone, someone's going to pick them up. I don't want. Yeah.
So for me, I've done that before, where I keep a player, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, whatever it may be. I keep them on my team, even though I'm not going to start him.
Right.
Even though I'm not going to start him, even though he's not going to bring my team any value, I keep them on my team knowing that if I drop them, I'm helping someone else, with their needs.
Exactly.
So it's almost kind of like I'm sorry to throw that fantasy football.
No, that's a great analogy.
Example in here. I'm a fantasy football guy, but that's how it feels like right now. But like I said earlier, I agree with Paul. I'm more of the let's just move on and cut ties right away. I just don't want any distractions. Because what happens if a reporter brings that up on Monday and says, hey, I thought we had moved on. We saw Jimmy G here at the practice on Monday. What's the objective there? It could just start a topic of conversation that I think that Kyle doesn't want to get into, and the team from a distraction standpoint doesn't want to kind of open up that can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? I'm over talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, so I'm going to release him from this conversation.
Sure. There we go. He's been released.
What's going on?
Some other
Rohan?
podcast will pick him up.
Yeah, exactly. Rohan has been at all of the camps as well. He's going to continue to be at all of the camps, just like me. So, check out his YouTube as well. He's putting out some content and some pieces as well. So go ahead, check him out. Go.
I'm having a good time, by the way.
This is awesome.
This is my first time on the podcast. Having a good time. Like I said, I'm enjoying the comments that the viewers are dropping in. Appreciate you guys that have jumped on the podcast live feed and are hitting us up with some comments. Seeing a lot of bots chiming in here. Not sure what that's about.
They keep going too. They're persistent.
Yeah,
they're persistent. I don't know where they came from, but you made it once you get the sex spot. Yeah. I feel good about it. Like I'm not even worried about it. Wow, they are blowing up the comments. I can't even get to your awesome, guys. Now I'm getting annoyed because now I can't get to the good comments. Oh my god. Let's see.
Paul Madison.
Here's a question. My dude right there. Here's a question from Niners Warriors. Out of all the passing plays for Trey today, how many of them did not have to worry about Bosa, D-line, pass rush, or tight coverage by the DBs? It seems by Twitter/media he never had a chance. So kind of like what I was saying earlier, there aren't any true sacks, as I said, but at the same time, like as I'm watching, what would have been a sack in like a real game situation. And so I tweeted this earlier, nearly every snap was either a would-be sack or a near sack. Like the pocket was collapsing on like pretty much every Trey Lance drop back. And the other quarterbacks struggle with that as well. So to answer your question, I would say like pretty much almost every snap, I wasn't keeping exact track of what the would-be sacks, but to me it felt like hell of a lot.
Kind of like double-edged sword, right? Like you want your defense to play well.
Exactly. It's such an awkward feeling.
But at the same time, you don't want your offense to look bad.
Yeah.
And look like they're not ready and prepared, right? I think when we talk about this situation, is the first preseason game is going to be very pivotal for us to really get a good look into the offense.
Yeah.
How good is the offensive line? How good is Trey Lance? I'm very curious to see. And I know we're quite some time away from this, but I'm very curious to see how much time Kyle plays Trey in the first preseason game. Typically it tends to be one quarter, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want your guys to get hurt. But this is a rookie quarterback. Does he play him longer just to kind of give him that experience and kind of see how he does under some, real game time pressure? Those first few preseason games are going to be very pivotal to us as fans, to see Trey Lance, like, how much has he developed from the games that we saw him last year to this point? I think that's going to be a good point of conversation for when, for your podcast and topics to discuss is, how good is he playing, or what are the areas of opportunities that we're seeing, with Trey and the offense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. So I'm going to ask you really quickly, like, knowing what we know about like how Trey Lance has been struggling through, he hasn't looked bad in every practice. Like the first couple ones were all right, but like the last 2 or 3 have been kind of shaky for him. So like, would you be concerned about that at all at this stage? It's like day 4 of training camp.
No, I wouldn't. Not after week 1. Again, I kind of want to see how he does in the preseason games. To me, like, that's going to be the real test, is how he does in the preseason game versus number 1 defenses. That's really where you get the assessment of, clock management, and just how he looks, running the drive, right, from first down all the way through. But I'm not worried right now. If anything, like I spoke about earlier, I'm more happy to see the defense dominating, because that's our bread and butter.
Scary.
That's our foundation. That's what's going to get us to the Super Bowl. That's going to be what gets us to the Super Bowl. And so I'm happy to see that our defense is dominating right now. Our front 4 is dominating, and our quarterbacks are really causing issues in the secondary for wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while we're on the subject of the defense, let's continue talking about them, because they have been huge, as we've been saying, through these, first few days of camp. And once again today, no surprise. And what I want to talk about is the fact that it really feels like the defense is putting a point of emphasis on getting takeaways, which this defense in the last few years under, Saleh, even under D'Amico Ryans his first year, they weren't huge on getting turnovers. I didn't feel like
2019 was a strong year on turnovers. That was the year where they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But you're right. Other years, it's been an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. For how good this defense is, they don't get as many as you feel they should. Like I always feel like they could have been better on getting takeaways for how strong they've been in other areas. Now, it really does feel like they're putting an emphasis on getting takeaways in this training camp, and it has definitely translated through the first few days of practice. I want to say, and I hope I'm not wrong, but someone mentioned earlier that I think there's about 10 interceptions between all of the quarterbacks. And so the defense, through their 3 units, have gotten that many interceptions on the quarterbacks. And to me, that's I think goes to show how much of an emphasis they're going to put on this. Another thing I noticed, if you guys have been watching my other recap episodes, I've been talking about what I call the gimme drill, because it's the one where Kyle Shanahan is throwing the ball. So he's throwing the ball in this drill to the DBs, the linebackers, and a few receivers, which sometimes the receivers are just like trainers, right? So it's a gimme like drill, like you're just trying to get after the ball. And so Fred Warner, he got an interception in this gimme drill. He intercepted Kyle,
nice,
which is also always nice to see. And Fred Warner also intercepted Trey Lance. Trey Lance did throw the ball right to Fred Warner, like he didn't see him, I guess. Like it was right in the middle of the field, kind of like a Jimmy Garoppolo middle of the field interception.
Oh,
we hate to see those, but it was Fred Warner. At least he didn't drop it. Like he secured that thing. And then also a few other players that got interceptions in that gimme drill was Lenore, McCrary Ball, and Taylor Hodgins. For what it's worth, right? It's just a drill, and like I said, it's a gimme drill where it's like it's Kyle Shanahan throwing the ball. You know, I always say this, but
they're working on their eye-hand coordination.
Yeah,
making sure that they secure the ball and basic skills, right?
Yeah.
Which, talking about gimme drills, right? We always remember the game in the NFC Championship game where Ward dropped a would-be
Tart,
dropped a would-be interception.
Yep.
So that's why they practice those plays, right? It's the eye-hand coordination, those what we call gimme, right? Gimme plays. But Tart last year would, one that he would probably like to have back. But that's why they practice those so that it could
it starts to translate, like it becomes second nature, and it may seem so.
It was hard, by the way, to bring up that play with Tart. It hurt because I still think about that one to this day. Yeah,
I have nightmares about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is something that like doesn't feel like it's, when you see these drills, it's like, oh, like that's not, what does that really do? But, and it seems so easy and simple, but it's the kind of thing that, does translate. It does help to make it second nature. When they have the ball in their area, they learn ways to not only to break up, passes, tip balls, things like that, but also just come down with it. So
plus it's a non-contact drill, right? Which is right now, no pads. That's what they're doing right now, is just a lot of non-contact drills. It kind of goes with the environment of not wearing pads. So it breaks up the practice and gives them good eye coordination skills. But what else do we have over here that we kind of want to dive into?
I wanted to talk about really quickly Mcclinchy ball, because I think he's looked pretty good. Like, to me, again, an undrafted free agent DB, and to me, he's put together a few plays that I've noticed, and it's like, it's nothing like, super crazy, but to me, it's enough to keep, maybe want to keep around if he can keep it up, what I mean? So just something to keep an eye on. If I ever see anyone who's like starting to catch my eye more than once, then I'm like, okay, you must be doing something good. So Mcclinchy ball is definitely up there. Tarvarius Moore had 2 interceptions today on the day. I think that's great to hear. And a lot of people ask me, like, well, what about Talanoa Hufanga? Is he still like the main guy? Is anyone coming from his spot? And ultimately, I do still think Talanoa Hufanga is the main strong safety.
I feel like he was the guy no one had on their radar last year.
Hufanga?
Like he was the guy that just came out of nowhere and really started to catch our eye towards the end of training camp. But he's kind of almost like your McCrary. Keep an eye on him this preseason, right?
Yeah.
But it's good. I'm a Hufanga guy. I like him.
Yeah, me too.
I think he has an eye for the ball, and wherever the ball's at, he's always there. He's always around the ball. And he's not afraid to be physical. We need that, I think in years past we've kind of lacked a little bit of that physical play, and so I'm a big Hufanga guy. So good to see that, in your eyes, he's still the main strong safety working alongside Ward.
Yeah, it seems like it, and he has great work ethic too. Like, pretty much every day of training camp, he's been the first guy out there.
Nice.
So
that's awesome.
people love to hear that. He becomes a fan favorite when you hear things like that, and he's really trying, and he's really coming into his own second year into it. So yeah, I mean, I'm expecting big things for Hufanga as well. Well, look, we've been talking about training camp for about 15 minutes now. And at this point, I think we're kind of wrapped up. But I got my brother here, and it's not very often that, we're together. And certainly this is the first time we've ever done a podcast together, right? So I wanted to ask him a few, questions so you guys could get to know him. He might have passed the test today. We'll see if I bring him back. I don't know. How do you think he did today? I think he did all right. I think he did good.
I'm hoping I get another invite. I really am. This was fun.
It was fun.
I enjoyed. Sure. I'm a football guy. I love talking 49er football, especially with you, Steph.
Yeah.
I think you've come a long way from your days of first getting acclimated to the team, the dynasty, to now, like, she knows more about 49er football than what I do. Like, she knows the players and some of these younger guys better than what I do. And so it's good to see that your knowledge of the game and of the team is up there, but I enjoyed it today. I hope I get another invite.
Hey, you're getting some comments. You're getting the cosigns from the viewers. So
there you go.
We love that.
Paul Madison, thanks for the shout out there.
Yeah, JC as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so at this point, we're just gonna chop it up, and if you guys want to continue watching, we'll appreciate that. And as you were saying, so like you mentioned the fact that I want to talk about the team of the 80s, actually.
For sure.
And like how you started off as a fan, right? Because, you said that, I've gotten better at this whole 49ers things. I know more than you now. But for me, this is a full circle moment. Because for those of you that don't know, like, the reason that I got into football and liking football and watching the 49ers in particular at all was because of my brother. Seinfeld too, but but yeah, mostly my brother.
We do got a Kramer bobblehead in this man cave. There is a Kramer bobblehead in the man cave.
Of course there is, of course. So that's really where I got like most of my love for football. It came from him. And so obviously, though he grew up in a different generation, he got to see all of the the dynasty years. You got to see the dynasty, which a lot of people have, right? But like me, part of the younger generation of fans, which I'm not even that young, I'm like 30, but the last Super Bowl was in 94 and I was I was
94, 95.
I was 3, so I was not watching 49ers football at 3 years old. But yeah, so why don't you tell us like how you got started watching the 49ers?
I've always been a Bay Area sports guy, and it started off with the San Francisco Giants, and obviously San Francisco 49ers was right there. I had the pleasure of growing up in the 80s in their heyday, right? Like those were the dynasty years. And so I felt spoiled, like looking back at it now, like I was spoiled. Sure. We had what was considered at the time the best quarterback in all of football. We had at the time the best wide receiver in all of football. So being able to watch, Montana, Rice, Roger Craig, Ronnie Lott. Like I grew up on, that era of 49ers football. So it was very easy to fall in love with a team and a dynasty when they're winning. And every year was a playoff year, we went to the Super Bowl, 5 times in a span of about, 10, 11, 12 years. Right. So, went to the playoffs, I think for like 15 straight years or something like that. So, for me, it was very easy to fall in love with the team that was winning. And, I'm a city guy. I'm a San Francisco, raised here in the Bay Area, raised in Daly City, right outside of San Francisco. So that was our team growing up. Like we had a lot of pride in the 49ers because they put the city on their map, and it was a winning organization. Like I talked about, we talked about earlier, Eddie D. He built this dynasty. And so before there was, the Cowboys and their dynasty in the 90s, and before there was the dynasty of the Patriots now, Eddie D was kind of like created the blueprint for this dynasty. So Steph, it was just fun, to grow up in that era. And I remember watching Super Bowl 23 and watching the drive, sitting there with my dad and watching, the 49ers march down the field, and I'm in the room, and my dad and his friend at the time that was there, they're screaming, they're jumping, and like I'm seeing that, and it was just like a joyful moment for us to win that Super Bowl. And we went down to the Mission to celebrate and to honk, and man, those were just great childhood memories that I have of the team of the 80s. I'm a diehard Niner fan, love football. I'm crossing my fingers that we bring title number 6 home very soon. It would be, everything for me, and, to be able to share that with, my kids now, and my daughter and my sons and my wife, and with you, and, just to be able to celebrate a championship. You've celebrated, Giants championships, Warriors championships, but in my eyes, there's no other feeling than the 49ers winning the Super Bowl. Like that is just next level. And so hopefully
hopefully
we get that, we get to that point soon. We've been close, we've been very close, 2 out of the last couple years, but hopefully we get to the Super Bowl again soon and we're able to bring number 6 back home.
So you were definitely spoiled, right? Because when you were younger, all of the Super Bowls that the 49ers went to, they won.
Yep.
And in my time, all the Super Bowls that they've been to since I've been a fan, they've lost. So
yeah.
So I am ready to see something like the number 6, man. I'm ready for it.
Sure.
Really quickly, though, I just want to go to this comment because it's hilarious. Niners Sickness Podcast said, Steph, my daughter just asked me if your brother is single, and I told her to go back to bed. She's 17. Then he said, first, I thought you had Jimmy G as your guest.
Jimmy G.
This is like, okay, that's a recurring joke, actually, because we went to the Dallas game. Oh, you're supposed to send me that picture. Did you send me the pictures?
I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Or we could show it right here. But anyway, that is like a recurring thing. We went to the playoff game in Dallas last season.
That was
fun. You would not believe the amount of people who came up to this guy asking him if he was Jimmy G, mostly as a joke, but like they were all saying the same thing. So you must look, a little like Jimmy G.
But I'll steal a quote from my wife. I'm Jimmy G, but just 6 inches shorter.
Just 6 inches shorter.
There you go.
Yeah. And can you throw the football at all? I mean,
well, I could probably throw it down the middle and maybe hit a linebacker, and we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Yeah,
it's a good one. Oh yeah, the bots are back. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, we were talking about a somewhat like controversial subject the other day.
Yeah, we were.
And so
is
this guy
is that the TO? Are we talking about?
Yeah. So this guy right here, he said to me that he's not a big fan of Terrell Owens. And I was like, why? Like Terrell Owens is somewhat like he's pretty iconic. He's one of those like iconic receivers in like the history of
for sure
of 49ers. Yeah. He has, one of the catches himself. So he, a lot of people hold him dear to their heart, but you have somewhat different feelings about him. So tell me why, first of all, you're not a big fan of T.O.
Yeah, me and Steph, we're having a conversation and T.O. got brought up, and she was surprised that I'm not a fan of T.O. And I told her that I came from the era of the 80s and the 90s where, we didn't like toxic players. We didn't have toxic players in our locker room. We had leaders, Ronnie Lott, Jerry Rice, guys that set the standard and the bar for how the locker room is going to be. And don't get me wrong, you said it. Terrell Owens was a great player, one of the top 10 wide receivers the NFL has seen. He has a lot of records, at the top, right, of all of some of the wide receiver records. I respect him. I do respect, his skill set, his ability, but he is not, to me, he's not considered to be a Niner that I like. And then it was just more so the way that relationship ended and how he kind of almost pushed his way out of this organization. I know there's a lot of, faithful out there that do like T.O., right? Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, he did, him and Jeff Garcia, there's a lot of memories there, and they had some. Steph actually brought up the controversial touchdown celebration on the Dallas Star, which
because I was like, how can you not like
iconic,
Owens,
right?
When he did that? And
but for me, it's like it's that type of behavior. He always put himself ahead of the team. It was always I versus I before the team and before we, and so. To me, he was just a toxic, toxic to the locker room, which, during those days, like the team started to kind of trend downhill. Those were kind of, that was kind of like the start of many bad seasons for the 49ers. And T.O.'s not to blame, but the toxic, environment in the locker room and the lack of leadership was definitely, something that I kind of almost blame Terrell Owens on. So hopefully your audience doesn't get on me for that, but hey, that's my opinion on the guy. There's a lot of 49ers that I like. There's a few that I dislike, and T.O. falls under the dislike for me.
Well, also it's like it's a different era now where, players are a little more how should I say, like, not outgoing, but like
well, I think this era is
they're
like
stars,
like they're divas, yeah, right? Especially at the wide receiver position.
I don't like calling them divas personally, but I mean, yeah, like they're very like outwardly in, I guess, and that's just the era that we're in. We're also living in a social media age.
Right.
And so, but one thing I wanted to ask you was about your expectations as a fan, because you came from that, like, dynasty era where back in that time you expected the team to be a playoff team every year. So how do you think that affects how you judge the team now?
For sure. Growing up in that era, we grew up with the high standard.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was a standard that Eddie DeBartolo set, and leaders such as Ronnie Lott and Jerry Rice set the bar as well. I mean, I think we went again. I think the streak was like 15 straight years where we went to the playoffs. And so for me, my expectation every single year is we expect to be a winning franchise. Up there with like, the greats of like the Steelers, the Patriots, right? Our standards are high. My standard for this team is high. We come from, right now, the Bay Area is a winning, city. Like the Golden State Warriors just won their fourth championship in 8 years. We have the San Francisco Giants that won 3 in a span of 5 years. So this area right here is a city of champions, and so I think that's what the fans expect, and I'm one of those guys that, the bar was set high by the team of the 80s, and I always expect the 49ers to be a contender. Always expect them to make a run for the playoffs and be a Super Bowl contender 100%.
So do you think currently with this team, the way it's built with Trey Lance under center, that this team could be a playoff team?
100%. And again, you got to remember where they left off last year. They were probably one play or one first down away from going to the Super Bowl and beating the LA Rams at SoFi in LA. So 100%, I do feel that they could get to the Super Bowl. Man, the road they went through last year was they had an amazing run, right? Remember, they had to win all out the final game of the season versus the Rams. They did that in overtime. They beat, the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, game that we were at. That was amazing. And then they beat, probably one of the best quarterbacks of our generation in Green Bay in what was like terrible weather conditions. We're a California team. We're not supposed to win in like terrible, snow conditions like that. But yeah, the run that we had last year gives me hope and faith that this team can actually duplicate that run that they had last year and definitely be a contender for the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to go back to some comments. So going back to like the Jerry Rice thing, Niner Sickness podcast said, I believe if social media existed back in the day with Jerry Rice, Terry Rice would have made a fool of himself one too many times. That's a good point. Like, you got to think about the fact that like those guys back in the day did not have, this form of expressing themselves like immediately. We got to consider that as well.
That is true. Yeah, different eras, right?
And then Paul Madison here says, I met T.O. in the offseason in 2000. He's a cool guy off the field, but Fabio was right. He was self-centered in the locker room / on the field.
Yeah, appreciate these comments, by the way. And like I said, man, we're nearing 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We still have some audience members out there that have stuck around. for this podcast. Yeah. So I appreciate you guys sticking around and some of the feedbacks and comments that you guys are leaving on the message board here. Really do appreciate that.
Yeah, Niner Cygnus podcast is a great show. I'm truly enjoying your show. The both of you work great together. We've only had like 30 years of practice talking to each other. We literally like have a group chat where we're
actually
talking.
Here's some me and Steph were talking this afternoon actually, and she brought up that her first ever 49er game that she attended was with me. It was actually Harbaugh's debut as the 49ers head coach. Yeah. But it was.
You got the picture? He said he had a picture of us at the game.
We're gonna have to look it up and maybe you post it.
Yeah, I'll post it.
But it was very memorable game. I still remember it. We won that game, by the way, and Ted Ginn Jr. ran back two return touchdowns. And it was an exciting game that we won in like the final. It was late in the fourth quarter that Ginn ran that touchdown back. But her first 49er game at Candlestick versus the Seattle Seahawks, Harbaugh's debut, like it doesn't get any better than that.
You know, if you think about it, that was like the perfect way. Because like I was a fan of the Niners before I went to that game, obviously. But that being my first game, I feel like it almost set me up for like my fandom.
Yep.
Like if you think about it, the rivalry with the Seahawks, which like kind of was born like that year because Harbaugh, with Pete Carroll
and Harbaugh.
So it was kind of born then, and then Harbaugh is kind of like where, they started turning things around.
Yep.
And
that was a good introduction, I guess, really to what's been a great 10, 12 years that the Niners have had. Because once Harbaugh came into the picture, it really, changed the culture of the team. And we've had, several winning seasons since. So it was good to hear that was your first Niner game. Looking back on it, it was a good memory for me to remember. And we've been to several since that game. Like we talked about Dallas, the Dallas Cowboys playoff game last year, which we both attended. We were both at SoFi last year for the NFC Championship game. A game that still hurts, right? Because we didn't win it, but we were both at that game as well. Looking forward to several more games down the road in the future. I know you're attending a Niner road game out in Denver this year.
Yeah.
I'm going to be at the season opener in Chicago watching Trey Lance versus Justin Fields.
And then we're both attending the home opener together.
Yes, you're right. We're both at the Niner home
opener. Should we do another live before or after that game?
Maybe Saturday night or Sunday night.
We'll figure it out.
There you go.
It seems like people are liking this collaboration. So we might have to bring it back.
I'm down.
But look, guys, we're at over an hour here. It's getting close to 11. We're probably keeping, Fabio's family up right now. So we're going to end it right here. But I have enjoyed this so much.
It's cool.
And it's been awesome. Definitely going to have to do this again. And what I want you guys to look out for, one, I mean, obviously my training camp videos is I'm going to continue doing these. But we have a little special treat as well. We have the background. Our backdrop is Fabio's, man cave. We did a tour of the man cave, and so I filmed that, and I'm going to be putting that up on YouTube shortly. And so you guys check that out because this room is amazing top to bottom. So definitely check that out. But thank you so much, Fabio, for coming on. And we're definitely going to have to do it again.
Here we go.
All right, let's go. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Peace.